So welcome everybody to SharePoint Patterns and Practices General SharePoint Development Special Interest Group. So that's quite a mouthful, but what it actually means is that we have a bi-weekly this meeting where we talk about everything else, typically everything else than SharePoint framework and client-side development. So in these general SharePoint development special interest groups, we actually talk about custom themes, site design, site scripts, solution designs, flow, Power Apps, and all of these customization and extensibility models, what we have on SharePoint Online or in on-premises. So we will have a special SharePoint 2019 meeting coming up at some point as well. So making sure that those are making sure that we cover the 2019 in some of those calls as well. So, and then we have a separate special interest group call, which is around SharePoint framework and client-side development, where we go through the BMP.js, client-side development tooling, O365 CLIs, and all of that. So all of these calls are happening on Thursdays, 7 a.m. Pacific time typically. Today, this week is a special week because the daylight savings are slightly off. So US goes to winter time 1 week later than Europe. And that's why in the US you had a slightly different timing for this week, which would be back in line next week. Now, let me actually quickly explain what this is all about if I haven't been in these calls before. So this is, like I said, this is the general dev SIG call. We talk about provisioning, automation, APIs, CSAM core as an example will be a future topic as well, because we're still looking into making that happen. Power Apps, Flow, all of these things, which is non-SharePoint framework development topics. And if you're interested, and there's always an opportunity for community demos, and we're actively looking always community members to do the demos so we can promote you and the cool stuff what the community is doing. So it's not just about what we do in engineering or what we do in the PMP crew. It's really around giving all of the other people and, well, MVPs and everybody else an opportunity to present what cool stuff they're actually creating as well. Now, there's multiple ways of participating in the SharePoint dev community. I kind of mentioned that one already. So demo a solution or a technical pattern. I know that I have few messages in my Linked as an example waiting. So sorry, David, for that one. I haven't replied on that. And a few others where people are volunteering to do a demo. I'll follow up on those. My incoming messages are slightly messed up because I'm getting way too many. So I'm having a hard time of following up on things. But if you are interested in doing a live demo showing a technical pattern or a solution or a sample or whatever, or let's say a technology demo from Flow and Power Apps, those are more than welcome on this course as well. So reach out to me, Patrick, or anybody else from the core team, and we'll get you scheduled on the demo. You can also contribute in a GitHub. So we have more than 400 samples in the SharePoint dev, SharePoint GitHub repos, and we're looking into, by the way, on this particular topic, there will be automatic catalog system relatively soon for all of the samples in a GitHub. Related on the samples action on a GitHub, recently we've been getting a lot of feedback on the fact that not all of the SPFX samples are up to date, and we are actually planning to have a small, let's say, structural changes on a GitHub, so making sure that in future you will have max 20 whitelisted, always up-to-date samples from engineering, and then there's additional set of community samples which might or might not be always up-to-date on the latest SharePoint framework. So that's going to help on clarifying what are the samples which are always up-to-date and they should work, and what are the samples which might be out of date in the past. Now, the last thing, provide feedback. So please provide feedback using the issue list, using the social media channels, or whatever the way you want to reach out and tell Microsoft if something isn't working from your perspective, please tell us so we're able to fix that. That's a super important thing. Now, we can't promise that we'll fix it immediately, but at least we get it recorded and we get it in the task list. And if it's a critical thing, absolutely we'll jump on the topics as well. So please keep on that feedback coming. Using the IM window in this course is also a one way of asking questions and providing feedback. Personally, when I'm talking, I'm having a hard time of reading what's on the IM window because I can't multitask. So some people can, I cannot. Now, before today's agenda, we're going to do some general announcements and updates on SharePoint development. I'm going to actually explain 2 new upcoming capabilities, which we'll mention also in the roadmap. And then I'm going to do a live demos of those. I didn't actually update the demo section section here, but I'm going to do a demo around the single part app pages. So what does it actually mean and how it actually behaves? And I'm going to explain what is a domain isolated web part, because that relates on the single app pages as well. It is SharePoint framework topic, but it actually shows you the future direction, how we can do isolation of a customization in SharePoint Online, which comes to preview as part of 1.7 release, and single part app pages comes to preview in SharePoint Framework 1.7 release, happening relatively soon. I almost actually said it out loud, luckily I didn't, but relatively soon. That the single page application pages is not technically about SharePoint Framework. You can actually take advantage of them in a different topic as well. So I'm going to talk about that one during the demo. And then hopefully we will have Mikko in the call. I haven't been able to actually follow up on the discussion. Is Mikko in the call? Is Mikko in a call? Mikko is in a call. Cool. I'm going to promote Mikko as a presenter based on a name, so hopefully nobody else actually try to act like a Mikko. And Mikko is going to do the second demo today around the site designs and site script. So I'm going to be talking a while, and then we'll get the stage to Mikko around showing a really cool site design tool which he has built together with his company. Now, cool. Let's actually get moving on the slides. So a few classical slides: documentation and guidance, AKMS SP Dev Docs. Remember this URL. We actually are we had quite a big jump in October related on the views here. So we're now up to 960,000 views in October, not on September. But anyway, badly updated slide. But let me fix that later. So now we're heading closer and closer to the 1 million view marker in the documentation, which is really good because it shows that the documentation is valuable if people come there. Now, if something is missing on the documentation, please let us know. If you have comments on the documentation, please add the comments on the documents, and we can have this interactive discussion on making sure that we are giving you the needed guidance, what you need for SharePoint development. Now, the second thing really important is the issue list. We are struggling on keeping up on this one, but we are trying all the time of catching up with it. So if there are any critical issues which you'll find, or an issue which you run into in an API or a developer topic, please report that in the AKMS SP Dev issues. This is the way for you to report developer and extensibility related issues on SharePoint. If your issue is related on out-of-the-box capability, we can deal with that one using this issue list, so please report that using the SharePoint Online standard SharePoint Online support channels. But if it's a developer related issue, please do open up an issue here. And then if it really feels like a critical thing, like it feels like SharePoint Online is down or API isn't working at all, add it in here, ping me and other people in social media, and reference that issue which has the additional details, so we can actually jump on fixing those things as fast as possible. Now, quick update on the roadmap. I haven't actually done any updates on this slide yet. Well, a small update, which I'm going to show in a second. But 1.7, SharePoint Framework 1.7 is really the thing what we are now concentrating on the SharePoint engineering side. So it's a big thing for us to get it out, because that then aligns the SharePoint development together with Microsoft Teams development. And it also has a really awesome set of additional capabilities for SharePoint Framework development. So it will include domain isolated web parts. I'm going to do a demo on that one today, or quickly explain what it actually means. It has the dynamic data, GA, so general availability of dynamic data, so connections between the components. List subscription, so you're able to say, I want to have events when an item to the list is getting added, so your web part will get notified when an item is changed on a list, or functionality is, well, list items are changed or added or deleted from a list, so you're able to subscribe to those events. SPFX components and themes, a huge thing which we originally demonstrated first time in SPC on May this year. Now it's getting to preview, so you're able to start using that one. and testing that one, supporting provider hosted solution. Big thing, I'm going to actually do a live demo on this one today as well. So taking Teams applications and hosting them in SharePoint. So magically SharePoint will just start supporting Microsoft Teams application as such as an iframe in the pages, and they will be completely obviously responsive as well, which is a cool thing. And then the app pages, we're going to have a live demo on that one as well. Now there's additional set of improvements coming, theming, site design, site scripts, additional placeholders, all of that. We're working on them. There will be then announcements coming up on those whenever they are coming out as well. And SharePoint 2019 G8 a week ago Monday, if I remember correctly. I think it was a week ago Monday, right? Somebody can confirm this in our window. So the SharePoint 2019 is now generally available, and it supports technically SharePoint Framework 1.4 except the graph APIs, because the graph is not in the on-premises. So you're able to use create modern experiences, modern web parts and extensions in SharePoint 2019. A big thing, obviously. Now, let's see if I can actually get moving. Here we go. So one of the things what I wanted to quickly show today before the Mikos demo, and this is the demo which I'm gonna explain this in a demo as well, is the single part app pages. And I added a teaser on this one in social media on last Friday, and it has been now liked like 200 times and retweeted like 120 times. So clearly people are pretty excited on the single part web parts, single part app pages. So this is a preview capability which is now coming to preview as part of the 1.7 release, which is happening in a matter of days or weeks, so relatively fast. And what it does is that you as an administrator or as a developer, you can flip the experience on the existing pages in a way that it's using a single web part app page layout. And what that one means is that you can have one web part on the page which is then locked, and nobody can get rid of the web part. It is automatically scaled 100% width and height on the level whatever the web part or the page layout actually has on the page. The navigation is visible there. If you use this in the group associated team sites or modern team sites, but if you use it in the communication site, the left navigation is not there. So if you can actually choose how the behavior, how it look like based on what kind of underlying site you're actually using. And it's natively responsive. So you can actually, even though it would be a Microsoft Teams application which you're adding there or a web part there, it is responsive. So we're scaling everything automatically based on the device what you're using. And that is kind of mentioned already. So this is supported with client-side web parts or with a Microsoft Teams apps. So just as well, you can take any of your, if you have built Microsoft Teams application which works currently as a Teams tab, you can actually release those as a SharePoint application in the SharePoint app catalog, and then you can use those also in here. The Microsoft Teams apps are basically provider hosted solutions because they are URLs which are surfacing inside of an iframe in the context of SharePoint. And I'm going to talk about that one when I'm doing the demo. But technically what this gives you is a capability of exposing whatever HTML structure, whatever layout you want inside of that whole the whole section which the page layout exposing you. Now, there's obvious questions like, can I get rid of the SharePoint header? And the answer right now, at least, is no. We're not planning to give that capability, because why would you then use SharePoint in the first place if you're not using SharePoint? So we want to have that SharePoint header there so that people know that they're in SharePoint, and if they need to do any SharePoint stuff in the page or in the context, they can actually still do that. Can I get rid of the whole header section? Then the question is, why would you then use Office 365 or SharePoint in the first place? You can absolutely then implement your custom Azure AD application and do whatever you want in that case. So there are certain limitations on this, and whenever this comes out as a preview, you can then give us feedback on what should be needed and what is supported and how it should be working in the future. This works by default when we go live in preview. It's a single part app page. So it supports only one single client-side web part or one single Microsoft Teams app. If you have two web parts on a page, you can't transform that to be a single page app page, single part app page. I'm going to show that one in practice as well. We're looking into potentially having then multi web part pages or app pages at some point, and we'll see how far we need to go on this context. Now, cool. The second thing what I wanted to quickly touch, I'm not going to do a huge demo on this one, but I quickly threw some slides and explanation of what it actually is. So we are also releasing a domain isolated web parts, and domain isolated web parts is something where if you have any security concerns related on the fact that the JavaScript is actually running in the context of the page, you can actually demand or you can control in the package solution JSON that this particular web part should be actually executed in a domain isolated way. What it means is that that web part falls on the app domain. So it is actually then executed through iframe, and it cannot access any of the other elements in a page. And what's cool about this one also from a solution design perspective and let's say security perspective is that it will also automatically create an Azure AD application for the web part. And then you're able to control the unique permissions what that web part is actually having based on the UIs in the SharePoint, or you can see same permissions also in Azure AD side. So basically we are dynamically creating then application in Azure AD which is matching to your web part, and then you're able to control in detail what permissions that web part is actually having, and it cannot actually access any other permissions. So this is a really cool functionality, advanced functionality, which goes to the preview as part of the 1.7 release. And now I'm seeing that there's a super active discussion related on Power Apps and something else, but sorry, I missed the original start on that, so I can't participate in that. But let me actually do a quick demo on both of those using my screen, and then I will actually try, and then we'll set the stage for Mikko to show some other stuff. So let's see. So here is my screen. And let me share my screen so we actually get the stuff moving from here. And I do apologize the background noise. That's what you get when you get a puppy at your home. Here we go. Cool. So you should be seeing now a SharePoint screen or SharePoint site contents based page. If I'm not mistaken, somebody can confirm. Somebody can confirm. Please confirm. Please confirm. Confirm. Excellent. Thank you, Hugo. So this is our eDoc. So this is super early eDoc environment. So this is how would I put it? It's day-to-day builds are happening in here. So you might see something which you're not intended to see, but luckily we are not we are recording this. Okay. If you see something which is not intended to see, then you are seeing something which is not intended to see, and no can do. But let me actually create here a one page, and I can show in practice what it means that we have a single part app page. So I'm going to create a page. And let's call this page as something simple like SIG, a special interest group call, so I can easily find it from the URL. And then I'm going to add here, let's start by something simple. So let's add a Bing web part here, Bing Maps. And let's give it a title, something like Redmond. Let's call Red. And here we go. Here's my web part, and let's actually publish the page. And it's a typical modern page, which is natively responsive and all of that, so nothing that dramatic at this point. Now, when we go to the dev preview, which will happen relatively soon, there is no UI to flip this existing page as a single part app page. But what actually happens is that we're gonna give you the needed guidance, because this is a developer experience. Either use console or PnP PowerShell or Office 365 CLI to actually make that transformation happen. So I'm going to actually double check my URL, that it is in the VESA site, and what we want to do is that it is a SIG ASPX. I'm going to zoom in and explain what are we doing here. So this is a dev preview, and it is not intended for end users or administrators in preview, so we need to start at some point, and then we'll see how we will expose these options in the future. But what we're basically doing here is that we're updating that page which we just created, and to use a single web part app page layout. So there's our page, there's a URL, there's the page what we're actually just created as a sig.aspx, and we're going to flip that page layout type to be a single part web page. So let me actually execute that, and clicking enter, and done, which seems that it's actually working. No errors. So now if I go to the page, and if I click refresh, bum bum bum, boom, we are actually seeing what is a single part app page in practice. And the key points here to notice is that there is no edit page functionality for end users. You can't modify what's actually on the page. It is basically locked down based on what did the developer wanted that page to be. Now, in this case, this isn't actually super interesting functionality because we only added a one web part there, but obviously the web part can do something slightly different. It can render something more nicer UIs, and you can absolutely also get rid of the left navigation. Now, one of the interesting things which I mentioned in the there's a good question from Raymond. If you want to change the page layout back, you can actually absolutely do that as well. So you can flip the page layout back to be an article, and then you can modify the page, and then you can flip that back to be a app part. So, but key point here to understand is that we're natively taking advantage of the web parts, SharePoint Framework web parts and SharePoint Framework experience, and we're locking down the page. So it feels like a single page application, but it isn't really a single page application. It is a page layout which does not support that the end users are modifying that, so you can lock down what is actually on the page. Now, I'm going to do a few demos here, and then I need to come back on the questions which we're seeing here. The second thing, what we actually mentioned already in the roadmap, is that we will support natively Teams applications and Teams files, Teams solutions to be hosted in SharePoint, and this is natively. So what it means is that if I have a look on this task.mio here, so let me actually show. If I click open, what happens? Oh, there we go. Excellent. So it did open that properly. And let me get rid of the left navigation so that's not too confusing. Here we go. So that that zip file, which is drag and drop to the app catalog, is actually a standard Microsoft Teams application. So now if I open up the manifest.json, which was unfortunately associated to Visual Studio IDE, so let me actually, that's opening up on a different screen. 1 second. We can actually see that this zip file is actually native Microsoft Teams application. There's no changes whatsoever on the zip file. It is just a Microsoft Teams application which somebody created for Microsoft Teams. Only thing what we needed to do is basically drag and drop the zip file to the app catalog, and our tenant scope deployment of or tenant scope app catalog basically is then providing the functionality to be available. So let's have a look on that one. So now if I would actually then add a page, and let's call this SIG2. And in this case, we were looking about the Mio tasks, and I can actually add that Mio tasks web part or the application natively within a SharePoint, and that's available as a web part. And obviously, in a way that if we want to do any 2 columns, 3 columns, whatever, it is natively rendering that. That is actually an iframe, which is then exposing the actual URL, which is now the task.mio in Teams equals true, because we're basically using just the Teams application on a page. Now, what's interesting around this one is that it is basically, how would I put it, if you are familiar with the provider-hosted add-ins model in SharePoint, this is almost like provider-hosted add-ins, except that it doesn't have the classic OAuth model, but you can easily integrate any application, and then you could do something like Task.mio is doing. It is taking advantage of Azure AD as a multi-tenant application for you to sign in as to authorize the persons. Now, what's cool around this one also is that let's actually save the draft and do a publish. Natively, or these applications, they work like a web part, and let's see, they also adjust like a web part. So they scale, even though it is an iframe, it is a provider hosted application, it scales automatically, so everything happens automatically in our layout, which is a super important thing, because classic provider hosted add-ins didn't actually do this. So we don't automatically scale everything. Now, in this case, we created a SIG2. So let me actually do flip this page to be a single page application. We can actually see how different or how it will look like. So let's actually call that then. That was the URLs. Yes, it was. Executing done. So let me refresh the page. And now we're in a full page mode, a single page application mode, or single part app page mode, using a, in quotes, provider hosted solution rendered in the page. And that's actually pretty cool, because now you can basically surface whatever layouts and experiences from that section and an area within in the context of SharePoint. And you're able to obviously get information around where you're getting hosted. You have some level of an access on SharePoint context and the users as well, which is really super powerful. Now, you can actually get this to the level of following. So in here, I have a single page application or single page communication site where I've actually previously already added that page or created a single part app page, which I then added as a welcome page. So let me actually show you that one in practice. 1 second. So in here, so this is a communication site. Communication sites by default do not have a left navigation. It did have a header navigation, but I actually manually got rid of it. So if I do that, that's now the welcome page. If I go in here, we can see that it's a normal communication site. Oh, that didn't actually save that. So let me go back in here. So let's add as a home page. Was I too fast? That should be fine. And let's get in here. And maybe I was too fast. So let me actually request that hiccup on the eDoc. So that might be the case as well. Okay, fine. But you can absolutely set the single part app page as the welcome page of the site as well, because now anytime I land on the site, I'm actually seeing the welcome page, a single part app page here, rendered by default. Now, what you can also do here is that you're able to, what I did as an additional step, as an upcoming capabilities, we are able to control how's the header actually getting rendered. So the default rendering of a SharePoint site header is actually quite big, as we can see from here, and it has the search over there and all of that stuff. Now, as part of the changes which we actually already introduced in Ignite, we will expose you additional set of options. So you're able to, in the theme, or in the change to look, you're able to go back to a minimal level, so which will then reduce the SharePoint section to relatively small here. Now, there will be additional options here as well, and obviously if people are demanding with none option, that might be the case, but obviously the suit bar will never go away, because we don't want end users to get confused. Now, the search text box will be relocated in upper section. That's something which we actually announced already in Ignite. So it might be that that's further is going to reduce the size of the header, but it gets to the relatively small level already, and then it's still exposing additional settings and options to the site level as well. So, but relatively cool. Now you could design, if you have a business requirement which is saying, I need to do something super crazy on a welcome page. Well, this is how you do that. You use a provider hosted solution, in this case, a Teams application or provider hosted solution in Office 365. You expose that through a SharePoint communication site, and you can do whatever layout you want. If you don't want to take advantage of any of the normal editing experiences in the in the communication site. Now, on the PnP provisioning supports, technically the APIs are supporting this one already, because like you saw from the REST API, JavaScript API perspective, we were able to modify this. PnP technically does support this already, so you would be able to create pages and modify this one using the PnP provisioning templates. We will make it more easily in the future as well, so more simplified. You're able to just select the page layout you want to use on the site. Cool. If you're using the SharePoint Framework extensions, those will be rendered and displayed as well. So these page layouts do support extensions, so headers and footers. So all of that is an option for you as well. So super cool. More options, more design options, what you can take advantage. Maybe Task Meow. Well, the reason why I use Task Meow as an example is that it's completely random outside of SharePoint context as an experience. So you can see how it will look like as whatever you want to do. Now, the second thing what I wanted to quickly show, let me actually show that for example, in here. So let me create a new page. Yes, the puppy was barking because there's pictures of cats. We have 2 cats at home as well, so that's not the case actually. So what was I doing? Now you distracted me. I was demonstrating an isolated web part. So I'm so isolated to iframe that I'm not trusted. So there's an isolated web part 1. I'm not actually, okay, that's not currently working. So let me see if I can find a functional one. Because I didn't really super well prep this. I just wanted to high level test the functionality. Okay, so there's a small issue apparently on the rendering, so that's fine. We are in eDoc, like I said, this is our day-to-day rendering environment. But now, what happens here is that whenever you have an isolated web part, so technically, let me show you that from here. As part of 1.7, let me show you that completely. So let me actually start the command line. Not super well prepared for this demo, but I will get this demo. So let me see if I can get the command line on the right screen. Here we go. So let me go to PnP folder, and doesn't really matter if I call here create a file SIG demo, and let's go to SIG demo. And if I do yo Microsoft/SharePoint, even though this is not the SharePoint Framework special interest group, but quickly just showing this one. As part of the native support for SharePoint Framework, as part of 1.7, we will give some additional opportunities and some additional options. So obviously the solution name is one thing. After that, there's a new choice of options. So are you kind of choose this solution to be part of supported on SharePoint Online, which is the latest and greatest always? Is it targeted to support SharePoint 2016 forward, or including 2019 and SharePoint Online, or SharePoint 2019 forwards including SharePoint Online? Now, in our case, if we use the SharePoint Online, that's always the latest and greatest. It's going to ask around the folders, but then it gets to the interesting part. Do I want to have it tenant scope deployed? Answer is yes for that one. But then it asks a new question. Will the components in the solution require permissions to access web APIs that are unique and not shared with other components in the tenant? I wasn't the one who decided this text, but basically what it means is, let me oversimplify this in Finglish. Do I want to isolate this web part from the page? That's what it basically means. So, and if I answer yes on this one, what it means is that it actually controls this attribute in the package.json file. So is domain isolated equals true or false? By default is false. If it's domain isolated true, it's going to actually then execute that web part. And let me get back on the page. Let's get the page in edit mode. This section in here is actually coming from a different URL. So it's going to actually load the whole web part. That's not actually the page. this web part, I can't actually show you that properly now when we have a small issue apparently with the web parts. Let's see if I can actually, no, it's not rendering at all. But it's going to render the web part in a different iframe dynamically. And it's going to basically render that in a different context. And what it means is that by default, and that's because it's rendered in a different domain completely, that web part cannot access any of the other elements in the page. So it adds additional set of security. This is the same thing what we had in the adding model, SharePoint Framework adding model, where the SharePoint app parts were rendered through an iframe with a app domain, which added this additional security layer where they cannot access the information on a site. And that's basically what the attribute is then doing. What happens at the same time, when you set that to be true, we actually dynamically start creating permissions, which you can actually then control in a web part level, which is technically also the solution level. So like in this case, the updated API management UI is basically explaining that there is a set of Microsoft Graph permissions which are tenant-wide approved, but then there's a one Microsoft Graph permission which is actually context.read, which is supported only for this package. So we're able to start granting permissions for individual web parts, and that's a really interesting thing. So what happens behind of the scenes is that this gets up to the level of the Azure AD. So you can actually see the same isolated one client-side solution web part, which we deployed on the SharePoint side. Behind of the scenes, what we did do when you approved the permission, we actually automatically created the Azure AD application. We granted the permissions, we did all of the needed configurations and everything else so that you don't have to do that as a developer. The only thing was a developer needed to do is basically add that add-in to the app catalog and then go to the central admin level and click approve for the permission. And whenever you granted that permission, we actually automatically created the Azure AD application for you. So you don't have to even understand what happens in Azure side related on granting of these permissions. And that should definitely, let's say, increase the productivity of the developers and help people to adapt the right ways of doing customizations and providing also security isolation between the functionalities. Good. Users can register applications with an Azure? No. Can a regular user add this kind of web part? Yes, they can. Regular user can add this kind of a web part in the page. Technically, any regular user would just see the web part in here. Now, if the web part is then trying to hit a Azure AD API, for example, Graph API, which requires the permission, that's when the permissions in the Azure AD will matter. Technically, you as a developer, again, you don't need to have any additional knowledge or understanding what's happening behind of the Azure side if you don't want to. As a administrator, whenever you are approving things, you need to be a tenant administrator to be able to approve the permissions for the individual solutions. And after that, the solution is executed in an isolated web part, either isolated iframe, isolated domain for additional set of security, and it will have its unique own permissions, which are automatically managed in Azure AD. Can a domain isolated web parts then not share dynamic data with other web parts and extension? Right now, I think when we start the preview relatively soon, almost set it out live again, but relatively soon, they cannot, but we're looking into different options on potentially even supporting dynamic data sharing. But technically, it's an iframe. The intention is that it's not going to jump outside of the iframe. Good. Does an Azure administrator role works on approving API? And Dirk is answering as admin can react but not approve. Yes, the approving means tenant level permissions because it requires quite a high hectic permissions in Azure AD to make these operations happen. But anyway, that's a quick clarification how the domain isolated web parts will work. Horrible demo because it didn't work today on the eDoc again. That's because this is our day-to-day up-to-date environment. So basically, this is something which some of the code which you're seeing in here was checked in yesterday. So that's a super early preview for some of the stuff for you through this call as well. But now I think that's enough from my side for me talking a lot today. Let's actually jump to Mikko, and I can then follow up on the questions on iWindow related on this stuff, and potentially we'll have some Q&A time on the end as well. So Mikko, hopefully yes, unmuted at least works.
Can you hear me?
Yep, all good.
Good. A bit more Finglish, if you can still take
it. More Finglish, indeed.
Yeah. I don't have any puppies, but my son is playing Fortnite in the next room, so strange sounds from this side.
Yeah.
So let me share my screen. Just a sec.
While you're doing that, Brian is asking a good question. Can you package multiple web parts with the same isolated permission management so that they can be scoped and approved together and not tenant-wide? Answer is actually yes. They would be then multiple web parts in a single package solution, so that should be fine. Now, and also just to note that one as well, the domain isolation only works for web parts. So if you choose the domain isolation when you're creating the solution, you can no longer include extensions on that solution. So that's a limitation of the things as well, because extensions are embedded on the page anyway. But now let's actually concentrate on Mikko's stuff. So this is the SharePoint Site Designer, and just take it away.
Yes. So my name is Mikko Punamäki. Also a long-time SharePoint veteran. I started back in the 2007 with SharePoint. I also have a longer history with .NET and JavaScript. And I wrote my first script back in the 90s already, so I'm an old guy. I have done a million things after that. Right now I'm working mostly with React, Office 365, SharePoint, and on Azure. Really loving everything that is happening around SharePoint at the moment, and the community and the open source. So it's a good time to be a developer. Topic of today is Site Designer demo, which I have here. It's an open source project. It's designed to help to create site designs and site scripts. And the main reason I created this one is that at the moment Microsoft doesn't have any specific tooling for this. I think Vesa hinted that something might come up later on. But yeah, now I have this one. You can find the whole thing.
Yeah, I'm going to just take quickly on that one. Nothing in the short time frame, at least, because we're still investing more on the core capabilities on site designs rather than the tooling behind of it. And clearly, this tool, and Yannick has done a great tool as well as a web part.
Yes.
This will help for people to adapt the functionality as well. But sorry for interrupting, so feel free.
Yeah, no worries. So you can find the tool from Site Designer.io. So it looks like it's like this. The screen is divided to two. So on the right side you have the actual script, and on the left side you have the kind of a visual representation of the thing. And basically they both have the same things. So let's create a new one from here, and let's add some content. I'm adding a new navigation list here. So as you can see while I'm writing, it's also updating the script on this side. All right, and of course you can modify the script from this side as well. So it will update whatever is on that side. Let's add something else. Let's add another one. Another link. So something to the URL. And if you want to change the order of things, you can just do that by drag and dropping. And basically, you can do the same here. So if you can, if you want to, you can just remove it and add it back here. And then now, as you can see, that the JSON syntax is not correct, so it will give a bit of a warning there. So let's fix that one. And voila, we have everything is back in order. Once more. You can remove those elements by clicking the trash bin icon. And you can add those elements from here. Let's add a few other ones. So this just pile up here as you build them. If you're not sure what the element does, we have this small icon here, which will show you a little bit of information from each of these fields. Not each field has them, but most of them. At least all the elements have this small help thing that you can use. I think we should support the whole schema at the moment, but of course it's possible that there are some elements that just have slipped, and we need to add them later. But if you notice something that is not here, let me know. The schema is long, the official schema, so it has been a big job to actually put everything in here. But as you can see in the schema, actually Vesa can tell about this. For example, there is a create page, which is not in production at this point. So that would be great if it actually would be there.
No comments. No, work in progress. Let's put it this way. Yeah.
Yeah. If you really look into the schema, you can find these small surprises and things that are possibly coming in the future.
Yeah.
But yes, this is something that we do not support at this point. All right. I also added some samples here, so you can investigate them, and if you click one of the samples, for example, advanced lists, it will come here, and you can see what's inside there. And these are coming from the PNP GitHub project. So I think they were a little bit, at least for me, they were not so easy to explore. So this will help a bit in that. All right. What else? I'm working for the next release. Some of the things that I'm going to bring into the next release is the ability to download a file. So you can use your own files from your own hard drive, and also the ability to export stuff. So you can of course do that already, just copy paste, but this will help with that even more. You can save it to your local hard drive or copy to the clipboard. And you can also do this with PowerShell commands. So you can write down the script name, and you can see that the content is updated as well here. This is really in development right now, so I don't have everything in here, but you get the idea of what's happening. So, for example, if you want to quickly test the site design on the site script and create a new site, you can click this one and then give the site name, and then copy the whole thing to PowerShell and run it, and it will create you a new site with that site script in it. But yes, this is still under development. Hopefully we will be there within a week or two. I'm also thinking about adding this to the Chrome as an extension, so that would help users to, well, connect to the tenant level directly. So instead of just seeing samples here, you would actually see your own site scripts and so forth. But yeah, that's coming when I have time to do it. So most likely, yeah.
Yeah, you have a day job as well, so.
Yeah, exactly. So.
And family. So.
Yes.
There was 3 questions actually on the Iron window, which I wanted to jump. So there was Stephen correctly pointed out that there is an ongoing discussion, and Sean Squires also said in the previous demos in the SIGs and also in the Ignite that we are working on a native UI and native extensibility on this site scripts and site designs at some point. It is in the pipeline. Does it mean that it's coming in the next month or 2 or 3? Highly most likely not. So we're still working on the right set of actions to make things happen. So this one will help people to get started already at this point. Now, Sean Squires is 100% now aware of this solution and what Mikko is doing, and let's see how do we move forward from there. So because this is really, really cool stuff. So super fluent and it's fast and everything else, but really helps on demonstrating what's possible with site scripts and site designs. Like Mikko said, there is in the schema, there is a set of actions already available which are not yet supported officially in the targeted release tenants or in production tenants. We use those actions actually in the eDoc, which is the environment what you saw already from my screen, for testing the upcoming capabilities and stuff which is in development. So we absolutely want to have a native support for modern pages, but that is extremely complex to implement to support every single scenario. So it's coming, and it might be relatively simple as a first step natively in site designs and site scripts. But then if you need to have anything complex, you can always fall back on the PnP PowerShell and the PnP provisioning templating model until the site scripts and site designs are natively supporting all of this stuff. There was also a question from Joel, if I remember correctly. The question was any future option to connect to an existing site and extract templates of existing elements, which is a fair question. It would be great to have a capability to be able to extract existing elements, and I would say sure, Mikko can probably comment, are there any designs and aspirations on it, but it is actually a surprisingly difficult thing to do. So we in the PnP crew, we implemented the PnP provisioning template model, and we've been implementing that now for 5 years, and it's not yet even ready. And that shows the complexity, and there's 130 contributors in the PnP provisioning templates, which supports extraction. So Sean and the engineers behind of this feature are looking into having extraction support for lists and simplistic lists. Anything complex, it will be delivered later. So one step at a time, heading forward on the right direction. Let's put it this way. But super cool, really valuable stuff. Joel had a good comment. No fun if it's easy. That's absolutely true. And thank you, Stephen, for referencing the set of sample site scripts. So github.com/SharePoint SPDev site scripts. There's example set of site scripts available, which can we, Mikko, put your don't stop sharing. Can we put your tool on the spot? Can we go to the SPDev site scripts and take one of the script and show how you take one of the scripts and then put it in your tool?
Yes.
Oh, those are available from here. Never mind.
Everything is available from here. Yeah. Okay. Of course, you can copy paste stuff if you want to. So whatever you have, just put it in there.
Yeah. So basically, Those open ones are the ones. Okay, got it.
Everything is here, so no worries.
Yeah, because that helps on getting started with the tooling, and then on the GitHub you'll see a high-level screenshot of what you should be seeing when stuff have been applied. And then I think somebody already. Well, I will one more time get a link on the site designs and site scripts documentation in the official docs, which is explaining what's supported, how does it work, how do you use this with SharePoint Online PowerShell. PnP PowerShell supports this as well. There's a REST API interface for this as well. And then you can, if the native scripts do not fulfill your business requirements, you can always use a Flow or Azure Functions to further extend the what's being supported. So you can run some code and do modifications with them.
Yes, correct. All right, but that's all from my side. Basically, this is an open source project, so you can download it with npm or just copy the whole thing from GitHub if you want. So basically, this is the component you will use if you want to.
Really cool stuff. And it's great to see the open source model being used here as well, because it helps. Even though the people wouldn't contribute what you created, Mikko, they would learn from the sample of what you have, and then they can build on top of that. So that's always super valuable as well. Obviously, it would be great if people would contribute on these things, but hey, it is what it is. So everybody has a day job. Even I do have a day job. Well, there's some other stuff what I always also do, not only this stuff. So it is what it is. Good. Yes. Thank you, Mikko. Great demo. We have like 5 minutes still for Q&A. Next SharePoint Dev SIG meeting is in November 15th. Just out of curiosity, should we cover do a deep dive on SharePoint 2019 Dev platform and do live demos on the SharePoint 2019? Would that be interesting or not? Or is there any other kind of topics which people would like to see in the generic SP Dev SIG next time? For SharePoint Framework, it's pretty clear what we're going to do on the SharePoint Framework side of the things. But if you have any suggestions, 2019 is getting some attention. We could have a special 2019 a session where we really go through the SharePoint 2019 and get it documented, video recorded and shared with everybody. So that's probably helpful. Well, clearly 2019 is a good idea. Good. We haven't done actually that much Power Apps. There was some Power Apps in some of these calls. It is really dependent also on what kind of community questions and community demos what we're getting. Where do I have my Q&A? I don't have a Q&A slide. So if we are interested in seeing more Power Apps in the context of SharePoint, I definitely will ping again checks and ask run demos where we are with that one and how to get started on things. Power Apps deployment would be good to see, CI, CD sort of stuff. Right now, Kevin, unfortunately, a lot of the stuff with Power Apps is not really that super well documented, or does it actually work? So it's a manual operation for many of the things. I know that they're working on APIs and that stuff. So. Can we have a generic call on SharePoint usage, such as content types, subscription, not just developer or indent? Pavel, we understand your input on that one. That would be different people than I am. So if we would like to have kind of but I do understand that it would be cool to have, let's say, a bi-weekly or monthly calls where Dan and let's say, Chris McNulty and all of these people would actually show the demos and have a discussion on the future direction of the end-user driven functionalities. That would make a lot of sense as well. Good. Ralph, SharePoint Framework extensions do not work on a classic pages, not supported. Breakdown of tenant level permissions needs when using PowerShell. That's a good feedback. We need to do a bit of work on the documentation. And yes, Ralph, in the Classic, you would have to use JS-Link or use a custom actions on those models. And thank you, Kevin. That's a good point. So the Interest Zone is a great podcast, absolutely, what Mark and Chris McNulty are doing. Now, it's not interactive demos like these are, so that could be something which I can have a chat with Mike and Chris and Dan if we could actually set up something like that, because that would make sense. In this call, we talk about architectural designs and usage patterns, but we don't really go to the admin topics or IT pros topics or let's say end user topics that much. Good, I think we hit the hour. So not too much time today on the Q&A because I took some extra time on my discussion. Hopefully we answered many of the questions which you had still on the call. Looking forward on your input on the new stuff which is going to be released on SharePoint Dev platform side. We will absolutely do more demos on those in the upcoming calls as well. SharePoint Framework, well, the 1.7 together with all of the associated functionalities is coming out relatively soon. So we should, well, definitely before Thanksgiving, because you should not ship anything between Thanksgiving and holidays because that's not a good thing. So that's from a timing perspective. I can't give you an exact date because the dates might still move slightly. Now, but thank you everybody for joining. Thank you for your input, and please reach out if you are interested in doing a demo. Thank you, Mikko. Great tool, absolutely great tool, and great demo today. Recording will be available in the YouTube channel within 24 hours. So tomorrow, right about this time, latest. But thank you. Bye-bye.